Alright, so today I'll be talking on endotracheal intubation and airway management in obstetric patients and how and when and the caveats in intubating these patients. So I think this particular talk was given in an obstetric critical care workshop, national workshop as part of All India Conference of OBG that happened in Bangalore in January 2019. So since this was a workshop, I thought I will show the videos. I think which would be very intuitive for the audience present to understand the intubation process in pregnancy. So we'll just start with this video about the intubation in
Ensure that the
pregnancy.
equipment is prepared and check that the laryngoscope is working and the cuff on the tube inflates and deflates properly. Pre-oxygenate the patient with bag and mask ventilation for up to 1 minute before attempting to intubate. Standing behind the patient with the head in the sniffing the morning air position, with the left hand, insert the curved blade of the laryngoscope into the mouth over the right side of the tongue, displacing it to the left and upwards. Advance the laryngoscope slightly until the tip of the epiglottis can be seen posterior to the back of the tongue. Advance the tip of the laryngoscope blade into the vallecula between the epiglottis and the tongue. With the handle of the laryngoscope pointing away from you at 45 degrees, lift upwards and away to lift up the tongue and epiglottis to display the vocal cords and the laryngeal opening. With the right hand, insert the endotracheal tube from the right-hand side of the mouth directly between the cords and into the trachea until the cuff passes through the cords. The markings on the tube at the incisors will show between 21 and 24 centimeters in the average-sized adult when the tube is in position. Remove the laryngoscope and inflate the cuff with approximately 15 mils of air to prevent air leaking during ventilation. Attach the tube to the bag and valve apparatus and ventilate the patient with the oxygen flow on 12 to 15 litres per minute. Confirm the position of the tube by auscultating over the apices of the lungs, the axillae and the stomach. If it is not in the correct position, deflate the cuff and remove the tube. Ensure that the equipment is prepared and
So as you saw, I think that is a practical demonstration of intubation, and not always intubation would be as easy as you would have seen in the video. So we need to have all the other backup plan provided we have difficulty in intubation. And as you would agree, in pregnancy there can be anticipated difficulty in intubation. So you need to have backup plan. So the key thing of intubating a pregnant patient is to be absolutely be prepared that it could be potentially difficult intubation. So that is the key element in intubating a pregnant patient or pregnant lady. So the vigilance is something that each individual should exercise while intubating an obstetric patient, and almost always you need to have plan A, which is straightforward intubation, and we need to have a backup plan. If plan A fails, then what is the backup plan that we have in place, and what are the available tools that we have for plan B? I think that becomes extremely important. So what that means is having all the ancillary instruments that may be needed when you land up in difficult intubation. So you need to have instruments like cricothyroidotomy, and you need to have good bag and mask ventilation. You may need to have a Bain circuit, and then you may need to have a ProSeal, LMA, and so on and so forth. And one thing we need to understand is if we land up in a situation where we have this situation where you have difficulty in ventilation, or you have this situation where you may have difficulty in intubation, I think this has a direct bearing on morbidity and mortality of a patient. So that is something which is important for us to understand. And if you look at the statistics about intubating a pregnant patient, so if you would see the difficult intubation in normal individuals, if it is 45, difficult intubation is 1000. In pregnancy, it is more than that. It is 64 in 1000. And if you look at the failed intubation, it is lot more common in pregnancy, 1 in 750 to 1 in 280, as opposed to 1 in 2000 in normal patients. And the risk of aspiration also, if you see, it is more in pregnancy than in normal patients. The risk is 1 in 500 to 1 in 400 when compared to 1 in 2000 in normal patients. Why is it that there is a risk in aspiration? Because there are a lot of changes that happen in the stomach, because the fundal part of the stomach moves to the cephalic end in pregnancy, obviously because of the pressure exerted or due to the pressure effects of the pregnancy. And in pregnancy there are certain physiological changes that happens within the stomach. So there is reduce in the barrier pressure at the esophageal-cardiac junction, esophageal-fundal junction, and there is reduction in the lower esophageal sphincter pressure, and there is increased angulation of esophagus and stomach region. And alongst with this, there is increase in the gastric volume. So there is about more than 25 ml of gastric volume that contributes to increase risk in aspiration. And there is increase in the pressure within the stomach, and there is increased acidity within the stomach due to increase in the hydrogen ions in the stomach. And why does that happen? And I think the increased hydrogen production in the stomach is contributed by placental gastrin. I think that stimulates production of H plus or acidity in the stomach. I think these are some of the reasons why the risk of aspiration is a lot more in pregnancy, and possibly the deleterious effects of aspiration because of the changes that happens. And there is delayed emptying also from the stomach. So this is a summary of all the changes that typically happens in pregnancy, which contributes to increase in the aspiration. So, and before we dwell into the difficult intubation, we need to understand all the physiological changes that happen in pregnancy. So, I've just put it in a pictorial format to make it easy for you to recall, and all the things are illustrated in the table. So, the first image will show all the variables that are increased in pregnancy. So, your heart rate increases in pregnancy, your total blood volume increases in pregnancy, cardiac output increases, your stroke volume increases, and your minute ventilation increases, your oxygenation increases, your respiratory rate increases, tidal volume increases. But what is relevant or important for this talk is your oxygen consumption also significantly increases. So what that means is that their propensity to desaturate because of increase in oxygen consumption is lot more. So there, I think that is something one needs to be aware whilst intubating, because their oxygen consumption increases up to 20 to 50%, which means their propensity to desaturate happens in a much shorter time because of increased need for oxygenation, increased oxygen consumption, and oxygen hunger that is happening. I think this is a point that you need to bear in mind when you're intubating pregnant patients. And the second image reflects the variables that decrease in pregnancy. So you have reduction in bicarbonate, reduction in albumin. Because of reduction of albumin, there is reduction in oncotic pressure, and the relative blood pressure or MAP slightly decreases, and there is increase in the systemic vascular resistance, and there is reduction in the hematocrit, and there is reduction in PCO2. And this reduction in PCO2 you could attribute to increase in minute ventilation and increase in the respiratory rate, and maybe due to increase in oxygen consumption, and there is increase in SVR. So this is a pictorial representation of the variables that increase and the variables that decrease in pregnancy. So if we have to deal with emergency intubation in pregnancy, so we need to understand what are the causes of cardiovascular compromise that happens in pregnancy. So we have this mnemonic called BU-CHOPS. So B stands for bleeding, any bleeding condition that may lead to cardiovascular compromise, and E is any thromboembolic phenomena that happens. So any embolic phenomena that happens in pregnancy, and the induction of these patients with anesthetic agents, I think that also leads to cardiovascular compromise. And uterine causes like uterine atony is one of the reason for cardiovascular compromise, or any of the cardiac abnormalities, peripartum cardiomyopathy, or any congenital abnormalities that may manifest during pregnancy. These can lead to cardiovascular compromise. And preeclampsia, I think this remains a very common cause of cardiovascular compromise that can happen. Preeclampsia or pregnancy-induced hypertension or eclampsia, and other causes. And the P is placenta previa or abruptio placenta. So this is the mnemonic for you to recall as to what may be the causes for cardiovascular compromise that necessitates the need for emergency intubation in pregnant patients. In addition to this, and the sepsis is also one of them. In addition to this, these are the typical conditions which we commonly see in any patient, and these also apply in pregnancy, because any cardiac arrest or any emergency in pregnancy, you may have to look at 5H and 5Ts for any cardiovascular compromise that happens. So hypovolemia can happen, hypoxemia can happen due to any other independent cause, or worsening of acidosis, hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, hypothermia. So any of these reasons could be the cause that may need patients to be intubated in pregnancy. And 5Ts are tension pneumothorax, cardiac tamponade, pulmonary thromboembolism, coronary thrombosis, and toxins. So these are 5H and 5T is the typical causes of any cardiac arrest in any individual, and these causes do apply even in pregnancy. So when we are intubating any pregnancy, obviously our airway assessment is extremely important, and so it is even in pregnancy. So if you have a patient with a limited neck mobility, then you would anticipate difficult intubation. And if it's a obese pregnant lady, obviously that has a bearing. And if there is a history of sleep apnea prior, that may be an indication that that can be a indication that it may be a difficult intubation. Or if you have a short mandible length, so I think these are some of the situations where you would anticipate difficult intubation, or class 4 Mallampatti, which we'll talk about. So I think this is a simple rule which you could apply, which is a rule of 3. So if you are unable to put 3 fingers between the two incisors, upper and lower incisors, then you would anticipate that your mouth opening is limited and you may anticipate difficult intubation. Or if you are unable to insinuate 3 fingers between the hyoid bone and the mental, so mental distance, that also would be an anticipation that it would be a difficult intubation. Or if you are unable to put 2 fingers between the thyroid to the floor of the mouth, so that also is one of the indications. So this rule of 3 you could apply, and this is a very easy way to ascertain that your thyromental distance or your interincisor distance is limited, so then you would anticipate difficult intubation. And I think Mallampatti score, most anesthesiologists in this audience would be aware. I think this is a very simple tool to ascertain that whether your airway management or intubation would be difficult. So class 1 is where you would see all the tonsillar pillars and where you would see the epiglottis very clearly, soft palate and hard palate. So if you have this, I think at least you would be very comforted to say that it may be easy intubation. So class 2 is where you may not see tonsillar pillars, but you will see epiglottis, you will see soft palate, you will see hard palate. So you may anticipate little difficulty. And the class 3 is something you may get worried because you will not see tonsillar pillars, you are not seeing epiglottis, you only see soft palate and hard palate. Class 4 is where you only see hard palate. And if any of these is complemented by a large tongue, I think you would anticipate that possibly this patient would have difficult intubation, and which means you need to have a backup plan, which means you need to have other ancillary instruments to support your intubation. And another important thing whilst intubating pregnant is, I think you need to have a personnel who has a good experience of having intubated few patients and who would have dealt with a pregnant airway. I think that is extremely important. And in intubation, I think the key thing is you need to at least have 4 people whilst intubating, ideally 2 doctors and 2 nurses. If there is no 2 doctors, at least 1 doctor and 3 nurses. So it's a so it is a 4-person technique that needs to be adopted while intubating. And when you are assessing airway, I think the pregnant ladies will have problems with the very friable mucosa. They can be having lot of mucosal ulcerations and mucosal edema, which happens as a part of physiological changes. So your handling of the airway has to be gentle, because if there are too many attempts that has been deliberated in intubating, you may end up with lot more swelling and lot more bleeding from this oral mucosa, which is lot more friable, and all this may make possible intubation into a lot more difficult intubation. So you should anticipate increased difficulty in almost all pregnant patients, almost all patients, and failed intubation would increase morbidity and mortality of patients. I think that is something we need to understand. And what we need to understand is in pregnant ladies, the saturation comes down much faster because there is increase in the shunt fraction from 2.5%, 2 to 5% to 12.8 to 15.3%. I think that is something we need to understand, because they do desaturate faster because of increased shunt that prevails in pregnancy. And as you see, the shunt fraction almost goes up to 5 to 6 times in pregnancy, and that leads to faster desaturation. And another important thing is they have reduced functional residual capacity. And we mentioned already previously that there is increase in oxygen consumption, which means there is an increased oxygen hunger. So because of that, their propensity or their possibility of acute desaturation is much higher if you are unable to ventilate these patients. And this is complemented or worsened by increase in the intra-abdominal pressure as well, because of the fetus that is there. There is increased intra-abdominal pressure, which sort of creates a little bit of atelectasis and reduces the functional residual capacity in the lungs. And another key thing for us to understand is, whilst intubating a pregnancy, you cannot take more than 15 seconds to put your endotracheal tube, because of all these reasons that I've cited, that their oxygen consumption is very high, they desaturate very fast, so you can't afford to dilly-dally. If you're not seeing the glottis, you should call for help or hand over to the next experienced personnel or bag mask ventilate, because if you take long time, they do desaturate, and that may lead to disaster in pregnant patients. And very often the pregnant ladies will have big breasts, and that would come on the way whilst intubating, so you may have to modify the type of laryngoscope that you use in intubating these patients. And most importantly, before intubating, your pre-oxygenation is something that mandatorily has to be done, and oxygenation has to be delivered for at least 3 to 5 minutes. They need to be pre-oxygenated. That gets class 2A recommendation. Level of evidence is B. And another important thing for you to note is that even mask ventilation may be difficult in pregnancy, and it is desirable to do mask ventilation with a 2% technique, where one person is doing good jaw support with a neck flexion and head extension and chin lift, with another individual or other personnel who is ventilating the patient. And we need to have all these tools very handy, so we need to have a different sizes of needles airway to make ventilation easy whilst intubating. And you need to make a list of all the checklist of all these alternate equipment that needs to be present whilst intubating pregnant patient to make your intubation easy. So you need to have a short handle laryngoscope. This is needed because of the huge breaths that come on the way, so you need to have a short handle laryngoscope to make intubation easy. And almost always you have these stillets, so that if you have a anterior airway, I think the stillets can make negotiating the endotracheal tube easy. And almost always you have this bougie. If you are faced with a difficult or anteriorly placed larynx, you may need a bougie and railroading the endotracheal tube on the bougie. And always have laryngoscopes, McCoy laryngoscope, to do epiglottis lift if you have a difficult airway. And always have ProSeal on the bedside, and LMA, so different sizes, size 3, size 4 LMA. So these are all the backup plans that you need to have in place whilst intubating pregnancy, because you really do not know which patient will land up in a disaster in having difficulty to intubate or difficulty to ventilate. And even I would suggest have this emergency cricothyrotomy set as well, because if you have any difficulty and if you land up in a situation where you are unable to ventilate or unable to intubate, then you may have to do this surgical procedure. So let's look into, I think this is something I want every listener to understand. Please keep LMA ProSeal handy, because this is life saving. So I'll just play this video as to how to use LMA ProSeal when you are having difficulty in intubating. So this is the simplest procedure which can be life-saving. I think every trainee or every individual working in intensive care should be aware of using this ProSeal or an LMA, because if you are not able to intubate, if you are able to ventilate, I think ProSeal can be life-saving, and you can ventilate the patients very well with this ProSeal. See, as you see, it is as simple as that. So it's very simple procedure and it can be life saving. What you just need to do is put a lubricating gel, inflate the cuff, partially inflate the cuff, and just insert it. You don't need any fancy tools. So I would request every one of you to gain little expertise by practicing this, and that can be life saving. See, and this is the protocol that we have in our hospital. I think I would suggest that everyone have this intubation protocol in your place, so that every nurse who is dealing with the airway has all these tools ready whilst you're intubating. See, the first thing you see, two doctors plus two nurses that we have, and always write a number, call for help. This is a anesthesiologist on call number, because you may need to have a help with your other colleague if you land up in difficulty. And you can see it's a very simple thing: ambu bag, functioning IV line, functioning suction apparatus, saturation probe, simple things, very intuitive. But if you have this checklist, I think you won't land up in trouble when you're faced with difficulty in intubation. And this is our hospital protocol, which is present in every bedside of a patient. And we bring this out, and every nurse is asked to check the checklist before they keep the things ready whilst we are intubating any patient for that matter. So, and now we'll move on to anti-aspiration, and we saw that the risk of aspiration is much higher in pregnancy, 1 in 250 to 400, as opposed to 1 in 2000 in normal patients. So it is recommended that anti-aspiration prophylaxis is given with ranitidine IV 50 milligrams 30 minutes prior to intubation, along with metoclopramide 10 mg. Why is this important? Because this is shown to reduce the pH, gastric pH, reduces the gastric volume, and facilitates increased emptying, all of which get affected in pregnancy. That your pH would be low, pH would be high, and your volume would be high, and your gastric emptying would be delayed. And all this could be mitigated by using this ranitidine and metoclopramide. And most important, positioning is extremely important in pregnancy. So typically the position that you would expect whilst intubating any patient would be neck flexion and head extension. For that to happen, you keep one pillow. In pregnancy, since the changes are little more profound with big breaths and the fetus putting the pressure on the lungs, I think the suggested sort of a position is put a roll of towel below the shoulder, and a good neck flexion, and then head extension with the manure, with keeping maybe couple of rolled towels or pillows. I think this is the position that is suggested, where you have a very good neck flexion and your chest elevation, so that your intubation is made little easy. And if there is an anticipated difficult airway, and if you are anticipating that your airway is definitely going to be difficult, and it's going to be challenging, and if you're anticipating there is going to be difficult ventilation, it's good to consider awake intubation through fiber optic bronchoscope. And as it suggestion is made, that even despite your best evaluation, 50% of the difficult airways are undetectable in pregnancy. So which again I have to reiterate and reemphasize, that every pregnant intubation should be considered difficult intubation, and you should have all the backup gear for it. And I have to reiterate, the vigilance, constant vigilance, and having plan A and plan B with all the other ancillary tools to make your life easy when you land up in difficult intubation is extremely important. So we'll just go through this video of fiber optic intubation for you to understand. If you're already anticipating difficult intubation, difficult ventilation, it's good to do awake intubation through fiber optic bronchoscope. So just have a look at the video.
When confronted with a difficult intubation with someone asleep, an ultimate way of doing this is to have an assistant grasp the angles of the mandible and pull forward, thus lifting the part of the posterior surface of the pharynx. So if you could do that, please, Gary. No how pulls forward. We get our fiber optic scope, and an easy way of using the fiber optic scope is to hold it axillary from the tip and make sure you know that we're going forward. Put it in blindly, axon moves. Certainly just look for the top. There's a forward. Okay, then what I'm going to get Drew to do, there's a Korea, is to hold the scope in a nice gentle curve, and then I just railroad this off in a nice smooth gentle curve, like so. And if I have any problems, I can always rotate it clockwise. Thanks, that's done. When confronted with the
Alright, so that's a video demonstrating bronchoscopic intubation. As you see, it's a fairly simple procedure. You should just have a bronchoscope and load your bronchoscope with a ET tube which is lubricated, visualize your glottis, pass the bronchoscope and pass the tube. So it is a simple procedure if you're anticipating difficulty to be done under local anesthesia. So we look into the algorithms that are recommended for difficult intubation. So algorithm 1 is for non-anticipated difficult intubation. So you would do good airway assessment. So all the things that we went through already, you would make sure that he's in a fasting state. You would have given ranitidine 30 minutes prior to the intubation, and you would have made sure that fetal is okay. So check all the airway equipment, optimize positions, pre-oxygenate, put cricoid pressure. So this is a simple, straightforward intubation. So if your first intubation is going to be difficult for any particular reason, and if you have failed, then your second attempt you should consider alternate laryngoscope and maybe try to ease off the cricoid pressure. And even if you fail in second intubation, then you have to really look at calling for help from your other experienced colleague. So but this is in a situation where all your airway assessment has pointed that you're not anticipating difficulty and your ventilation is easy. So the algorithm 2 talks about where there is a failed intubation and then you have an issue. So you already declared that that it has a failed intubation. I think the first most important thing is call for help. I think that is extremely important. And here, in a situation where you already failed your attempt with laryngoscope, the most important thing is to have a backup support with supraglottic airway, which is LMA or your ProSeal. And again, are you able to ventilate well? If you are able to ventilate well after you put a supraglottic airway, then you can decide if you believe it is safe, you're able to ventilate well, then you either wake up the patient and abandon, or if you think you have to go proceed with surgery when you consider it is safe. But if you consider it is not safe, you are not able to oxygenate, then this is a disaster situation to be in, where you are not able to intubate, not able to oxygenate. Then you have to go to algorithm 3. What is algorithm 3? This is a situation where none of us would want to be there, where you are unable to ventilate, you are unable to intubate, you have to scream for help, call for more help. I think what the option that is left for you is only surgical procedure, because you're not able to intubate. Forget intubation, you're not able to ventilate even with supraglottic airway. Then you may have to do cricothyroidotomy. After you do cricothyroidotomy, then again you need to ascertain whether you are able to oxygenate. If you are able to oxygenate, wake the patient up and abandon any procedure that you have planned. Or if a surgery is planned, then if you believe that you are able to oxygenate well, then you proceed for the surgery. So if you are not able to oxygenate in this, then it's a disastrous perimortem situation where you have to plan for advanced life support in the form of ECMO or putting them on bypass and then doing perimortem cesarean. So none of us would want to be in this situation. So you need a lot more manpower as assistance for your help. So let's look into this video of cricothyroidotomy for you to understand. It's a very simple procedure for all the people who have done percutaneous tracheostomy and mini trachs. It's a very easy procedure. So just we'll look into this video.
This sequence uses a resuscitation mannequin. The cricothyroid membrane is identified and a skin nick is made with a scalpel blade. Using a special kit, a needle is introduced into the trachea. A wire guide is passed through the needle into the trachea. The cricothyroidotomy cannula with dilator is advanced over the wire guide into the trachea. Verification of correct cannula placement is by physical examination and capnography.
Alright, so that's the video. So we have looked into all the videos of normal intubation. We have looked at the video of LMA ProSeal. We have looked at a video of bronchoscopic intubation, and now we have looked at the video of cricothyrotomy. I think if you are well versed in all these 4 procedures, literally you can save any life, even if you are faced with a challenge of difficult intubation. So the take home message is every pregnant situation has to be looked at as a difficult airway, and one needs to evaluate the airway before proceeding to intubation. And always please have a backup plan that there is a 50% likelihood that you may fail first attempt, and you need to have this backup plan. Always please don't hesitate to call for help. Even if you have two doctors, it's no harm calling for a third experienced anesthesiologist to help you in case you land up in crisis situation. This is the most important step. Always while intubating pregnancy, please have all these ancillary tools: short handle laryngoscope, stillets, bougie, McCoy blade, then ProSeal, LMAs, different sizes LMA, because you need to have different sizes because one size does not fit all. So you may need to have at least three sizes to be kept. Alright. And always try to choose a device that is familiar to you rather than trying to pick up first time a device which is non-familiar, which you haven't used. And positioning a patient whilst intubation is most important in pregnancy. And if you are not satisfied with oxygenation or ventilation, please abandon the surgery and wake up the patient, and whatever that needs to be done thereon should be considered. So thank you very much. So as I would say, happiness is carrying whole world inside you. So when you're dealing with pregnancy, it's not about one life, it's about two life, which means your resolve should be to be all the more prepared, all the more geared up to face this challenge. Thank you very much.